It's the Peter Schiff Show.
We are back. This is Peter Schiff. We're speaking with U.S. Senator Jim DeMint, who is the author of the new book, Now or Never, Saving America from Economic Collapse. Unfortunately, it might be a little bit too late. We might have an economic collapse anyway. In fact, the only thing that might save us is the collapse, because that is probably what it's going to take to actually do the right thing. Jim, let me propose a scenario to you and let me know how you think the Congress will react. Let's say we don't make any of the changes that we need to make, and maybe in a couple of years, the national debt, the funded portion, hits $20 trillion. Right now, it's around $16 trillion. Let's say interest rates start to move up. Maybe interest rates are 7.5% instead of 2 or 3% or 0 where they are now. And it costs us $1.5 trillion a year just to pay the interest on the national debt. What are we going to do? I mean, are we going to default on the debt, or are we going to tell the people on Social Security that they're out of luck, there's no more money?
Well, that's not an imaginary scenario. That's where we're headed now unless we turn things around. And I don't know what we're going to do. I hope we can make decisions to change that direction rather than wait for there to be a meltdown, because the problem we have in America, we're not Greece. There's no one who can pick us up or who can bail us out. If the world's reserve currency, which is the dollar, begins to folks lose confidence in it, it's hard to stop those dominoes from falling. And we could be in a situation if the euro falls this year, and our banks are heavily invested in European banks, and our Federal Reserve has bought a lot of euros, that they could bring us down with them, in effect. And so
I actually think, Jim, it's the opposite. The worst thing that would happen to us in the short run is that the euro goes up. It's the weakness in the euro that is propping up our bond market and the dollar. If the euro starts to rise, the dollar is going to tank. Oil prices will go up. Food prices will go up. It'll put more upward pressure on yield. So in the short run, the one thing we got going for us is that people are worried about Europe.
No question about it. Capital is coming to our country, even though we don't deserve it, because the euro's in such trouble. But if it goes down completely, and again, we're heavily invested in the European economy. We are holding a lot of euros. Our banks are intermingled with theirs. It would do a lot to bring down our economy. And then you're going to have demands of things like, okay, let's forgive everybody's debt and issue a new currency. I mean, no telling what will happen.
Oh, yeah. In other words, I mean, basically, we're damned if it does, and we're damned if it doesn't. Whichever way the euro goes could cause us a lot of pain. But, one thing I want to point out as far as the idea that we're going to act in time, look, as far as I'm concerned, nothing was more obvious than the housing bubble. Nothing was more obvious to me that when that bubble burst, it was going to, be pandemonium, that Freddie and Fannie were going to go bankrupt, that the banks were going to fail. We had plenty of time in 2002, 2003, 2004 to nip that in the bud, to rein in Freddie and Fannie, for the Fed to raise interest rates. But nobody in Washington wanted to upset that apple cart. Nobody wanted to swallow the bitter tasting medicine. Nobody wanted to tell people they couldn't get rich quick in real estate. And I see the same thing happening now. Nobody wants to stand up and say, look, we can't have this economy. We can't pretend that the economy is growing. We have to let interest rates go up. We have to defuse this bomb before it blows up.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And a number of us were pushing reform legislation or hearings or oversight of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And the same people who wrote Dodd and Frank, kept us from reining in. But you're right. It was so obvious. We were creating this huge subprime market. We were securitizing these subprime loans. Wall Street was selling them all over the world. And we just created a mess that could have been anticipated very easily. And we are doing that again with quantitative easing. The Federal Reserve has bought the majority of our national debt over the last 2 years. But I don't want to depress people and think that we have to go down. The reason I wrote Now or Never is I honestly believe if we can get someone in the White House and a new Senate that honestly understands we have to balance our budget, we don't have to balance it next year, but we do have to show the world that we have a plan and a determination to move towards a balanced budget. We could save our country and our currency and without going through a total meltdown.
Well, you're right there. It won't be a total meltdown. And the thing is, the free market capitalism is so vibrant and it works so well that we can solve these problems rather quickly. It might be a year or two of pain, but then there's a whole lot of light at the end of this tunnel if we can just do the right thing. We just need more people in the Senate like you who know what the right thing is. And I appreciate the fact that a couple of years ago you endorsed Rand Paul when he ran for Senate. I'm glad that he's there helping you out. I wish I could have been there as well, as opposed to Dick Blumenthal, who's probably a thorn in your side.
Yeah.
But I got to ask you, Rand Paul's father, you endorsed Rand. His father's running for president. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. Any chance that you can endorse Ron Paul? It'd be great to have Ron as president. That would make your job a lot easier.
It would, and I've told all the other candidates, and I've said it publicly, I'm not sure that Ron Paul is going to make it through to the finish line, but I think the Republican who gets the nomination is going to be the one who takes Ron Paul's ideas of individual liberty and constitutional limited government, an out-of-control Federal Reserve, and recognizes that that's important. And I think what Ron Paul is doing for us is moving the debate within the Republican Party to a debate between conservatives and libertarians. That's the only debate that makes sense when your country's $16 trillion going on $20 trillion in debt. We no longer can debate about how much more to spend, and that's really what moderates and liberals debate about.
Yeah.
So,
I think it'd be easier for him to win, if you endorse them. Maybe you could put him over the top.
Well, yeah, I'm going to keep my focus on the Senate Conservatives Fund, because any of those four who get in the White House will sign legislation if we send it to them from the House and the Senate. If we still have Harry Reid as Majority Leader, it doesn't matter who we elect.
Well, I think the key is if you have a president who will use that veto pen, who will refuse to sign any of this government spending. You can win with a president who will veto. If he just will veto an increase in the debt ceiling, right? If you can't raise the debt ceiling, Congress has no choice but to cut spending.
Well, we need people with courage. That's what I'm looking for in our candidates, is someone who's willing to do what a Scott Walker did in Wisconsin, Chris Christie in New Jersey. These guys aren't movement conservatives, but they got some fire in them, and they're willing to take on the government unions and take some pain. And most of the pain that we're going to have to accept is going to be by the politicians, because everybody up here is here to take home the bacon and to buy votes by creating new programs like the president tried to do in his State of the Union. But to say no to people creates a lot of political pain.
Yeah, I like it how the president tried to say he's willing to pay higher taxes. He doesn't pay any taxes. He gets all his money from the government. He gets free housing. He gets free food. He gets an entourage. He gets an airplane. He doesn't pay any taxes at all. The whole thing is a joke that he pays taxes. But, I think one of the worst things about his speech is he wants to refinance all the mortgages of everybody who is underwater. The banking system is already hemorrhaging. If we do this to the banks, it's going to make even more of them fail. He's focusing on the fact that when somebody refinances their mortgage, they get to save money. Who's losing that money? The banks are losing that income.
I know, one of my sons, he was determined to make as large a down payment as he could on his house so that he would have smaller payments. But he's not underwater because he didn't get one of those 100% mortgages. If the government starts bailing out those people who are underwater because they got 100% mortgages, the people who really did responsible mortgages and put some of their own money in it, those are the people who get burned. I think we've got to start rewarding those who make good decisions and are responsible, and just stop bailing people out.
Well, that's the beauty of capitalism and the free market. The people who do the right thing are rewarded. It's only under government, under a planned economy, where you reward bad behavior and punish good behavior. And it's no wonder you get those moral hazards and you get all these problems. But then you have guys like Obama blaming the problems on capitalism when it was government that created them.
You're exactly right. Exactly right. Well, look, hey, Peter, I really appreciate the chance to talk about Now or Never. The whole point is to recruit people to help us. I think if folks take the time to read the book, they'll know what we need to do and what they can do personally. And I thank you for what you do every day, because we saw in the last election, it was really radio talk shows around the country that got people to the polls and helped us change things. We need one more good election, and we can turn things around.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate what you're doing, being a voice of reason, one of the lone voices there in the U.S. Senate. We need more people like you. Hopefully, we'll have some more people like you, and I wish you luck with the new book, It's Now or Never, Saving America from Economic Collapse. Anyway, we got another half hour coming up, so stick around. We got a lot more on the Peter Schiff Show here on SchiffRadio.com.
Looking back on fate and just how it's gotta be, you play the record straight and keep your spirit free. Your mind will start to wander as you make the final call. Only one more minute until you can leave it all behind you now.
The Peter Schiff Show.
Should've quit, but you didn't know how.